I still don't like talking about this, even though it's been years. At the time, I told myself I'd move on, bury it, pretend it never happened. But some things don't fade. They rot inside you, infecting every normal moment of your life until you can't tell whether you're remembering it or reliving it. This happened my junior year of high school. I went to a public school that had been standing for decades, maybe longer. The kind of place that creaked when you walked through the halls. Everyone joked about it being haunted, but honestly, every school in America has that reputation. It never fazed me, at least not at first. That semester, I was assigned to work with the theater tech crew as part of a fine arts elective. I wasn't into theater, but the alternative was chorus, and I couldn't sing to save my life. The tech crew job wasn't glamorous, mostly moving props, adjusting lights, sweeping the stage, but it gave me an excuse to hang out after school, away from home, which I appreciated. The auditorium had a basement. At least that's what they called it. It was more like a storage level, reachable by this heavy metal door tucked behind the curtains on the left side of the stage. A steep flight of stairs led down into it. The place smelled like dust, mold, and forgotten wood. Rows of props, mannequins, broken furniture, and racks of costumes filled the rooms. During rehearsals, the crew would run up and down constantly, fetching things. I hated going down there alone, but everyone did. It wasn't unusual. Something about it felt wrong. The lights flickered, and the hum of the old bulbs always made you think someone else was breathing in the room. The first time I really noticed something was off was a Tuesday in late October. Rehearsal had ended, and the director asked me to grab a box of fake flowers from downstairs. I didn't want to look like a coward in front of the seniors, so I went. I remember pushing the heavy door open and descending into the basement. The air got colder, like always. My flashlight from my phone cut through the dim glow of the yellow bulbs. The box of flowers was right where I'd seen it earlier, on a shelf near the stairs. Easy grab, but when I turned to leave, the hallway looked longer. I swear I'd only walked 5 steps from the stairs, but suddenly it looked like I was at the far end of a corridor that stretched much further than I remembered. The stairwell door was just a pinprick of light in the distance. I laughed nervously to myself, chalking it up to bad perspective. Still, my walk back took longer than it should have. When I finally pushed through the door, everyone was gone. The auditorium was empty. The weird thing? I could have sworn I'd only been down there a minute. But when I checked the time, almost 20 minutes had passed. The next day, I mentioned it to another tech crew member, Jason. He just shrugged and said, "That happens down there. Time's weird. Don't overthink it." He said it so casually, like it was common knowledge. But that comment bothered me more than if he'd denied it. I tried to avoid going down alone after that. But of course, the director loved sending me because I was responsible. Every time I went, I felt the same distortion. Distances stretching, my footsteps echoing too long, clocks not matching up when I came back. Then came the night everything went too far. It was late November, a Thursday. We were prepping for the winter play. Everyone was stressed. The rehearsal ran late, past 8:30 p.m. Most of the cast had gone home, and only a handful of crew were left cleaning. The director asked me to grab a trunk of costumes from the basement. I hesitated. She noticed. "Please, it'll only take you a minute." So, like an idiot, I went. The second I opened the basement door, the air hit me, freezing, colder than the outside November night. My breath puffed white. I started down the stairs, phone flashlight out. The trunk wasn't where it should have been. Not on the shelves. Not in the corner. I walked deeper, past the racks of costumes, down a narrow hall I'd never noticed before. That was mistake number one. The hallway turned at a sharp angle, leading to another door. A door I had never seen in all my months of going down there. It was metal, painted the same dull gray as the walls, with no handle on the outside, and yet it was open. I should have turned back. But I didn't. Inside was a room larger than the rest of the basement combined. It looked like some kind of workshop. Tables, tools, piles of wood, old light fixtures, even broken desks. Everything coated in dust thick enough to choke on. In the center of the room was the trunk I'd been asked to get. Relief washed over me. I hurried to it, grabbed the handle, and froze. Because someone whispered, I can't describe it well. It wasn't words, more like a hiss, but shaped like speech. Right in my ear. I dropped the handle and spun around with my phone light. Nobody. The whisper came again. This time from across the room. My heart hammered. I lifted my phone higher, scanning. Shadows stretched long, jerky, wrong, as if the objects were casting them in the wrong direction. And then I saw something move. At the far end of the room, between two shelves, something slid into the light. It looked human-shaped but elongated, as if stretched thin. Its head tilted unnaturally to one side. I ran. The whisper rose into a chorus, multiple voices hissing at once, louder and louder, until it was a scream without sound. I bolted through the door, slamming it shut behind me, clutching the trunk handle like a lifeline. I didn't stop until I was back upstairs, dragging the trunk onto the stage. Everyone stared at me. Apparently, I looked pale and drenched in sweat. The director asked what happened. I couldn't answer. But here's the part that ruined me. When I dropped the trunk on the stage, it wasn't full of costumes. It was full of old broken masks, cracked porcelain faces, their painted eyes staring upward. I swear I hadn't grabbed the wrong trunk. The following week, I avoided rehearsal. I told my parents I was sick, but when I came back, the director pulled me aside. "Where did you find that trunk?" she asked, voice low. I said, "In the basement." "Why?" She glanced around, then leaned closer. "That trunk hasn't been down there in years. We moved it to storage offsite." I laughed nervously. Told her she must be mistaken, but she wasn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the whisper in my ears. At one point I got up to grab water, and when I passed my bedroom mirror, I saw something behind me. Tall, thin, tilting its head. I spun around. Nothing there. A month later, they closed the auditorium basement for renovations. "Mold issues," they said. But I know the truth, and I'll never go back, because sometimes when I'm lying awake at night, I hear it again. That hiss, that whisper that isn't words, and I know it's still waiting for me. I used to think the creepiest thing about high school was the kids. Cliques, bullies, fake friends, and all that drama. But I was wrong. The scariest thing I ever experienced didn't come from another student. It came from a teacher, or at least someone pretending to be one. This happened my freshman year when I was only 14. I was scrawny, shy, and didn't know how to say no. Looking back, that probably made me a target. It was November, one of those gray, freezing days where the sky never really brightens. Our gym teacher was out sick, so we had a substitute. At first glance, he didn't seem unusual. He looked about 60, gray hair, glasses, a bulky jacket. He smiled a little too much, but hey, most subs just want to get through the day. He took attendance with a raspy voice, occasionally squinting at me like he recognized me. That was unsettling, but I brushed it off. He told us to play volleyball and then disappeared into the hallway, leaving us unsupervised. Classic sub behavior. The real problem started when class ended. I went to the locker room to change, spinning my combination like usual. But my lock wouldn't budge. No matter how many times I tried, it jammed. My friends were already leaving, and I panicked, not wanting to miss the bus. I went to find the sub. He was standing by the office with a clipboard. I told him my locker wouldn't open, and he smiled like he'd been waiting for me to say that. "No problem," he said. "I'll grab the list of combos." He walked me back into the locker room, which was almost empty by then. Only one other girl was finishing up. That already felt wrong. Teachers didn't go into locker rooms with students. But I was too young and polite to question it. He fiddled with my lock, muttering to himself. The first combination didn't work. He laughed. Tried again. Still nothing. With each attempt, his laugh got more forced, and his hand rested a little longer on my shoulder. I froze when I felt his hand slide lower, brushing my back. "I think I've got it," he whispered, spinning the dial again. This time the lock clicked open. Relief flooded me. I grabbed my clothes, eager to change and leave. He smiled at me like we shared a secret. I waited until he left before I started changing. But when I pulled my shirt over my head, the lights went out. Pitch black. I fumbled, heart pounding, thinking it was a power outage. But then I heard breathing, not mine. Deep, steady breathing in the dark. I froze, listening. It was close. Too close, I whispered. "Hello?" My voice cracked. Silence. I turned on my phone screen just enough to glow dim blue. And that's when I saw it. A face peeking around the corner of the lockers, his face. The subs. Watching me. I screamed and ran, half-dressed, shoving my stuff into my backpack. He stepped out of the shadows, stammering, "Wait. It's not what it looks like." I bolted out the side exit into the freezing rain, and didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks from school. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. I was too embarrassed, too scared. What if no one believed me? What if they said I'd imagined it? But the next day I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The regular gym teacher was back. I overheard him telling another teacher that he hadn't called in sick. There had been no substitute scheduled. For the rest of the year, I avoided the locker rooms unless they were full of people. I never saw that man again. No one ever asked about him. It was like he'd never existed, but I know what I saw. I know he was there, and sometimes when I'm home alone, I swear I still hear that breathing. When I was in high school, I did a lot of dumb things. Sneaking out at night, lying to my parents, drinking in basements, the usual teenage rebellion. But one night, me and my friends pulled a stunt so reckless that I still wake up sweating from the memory. We broke into the school. It wasn't planned, not really. It was late May, near the end of sophomore year, and boredom mixed with teenage arrogance is a dangerous combination. My best friend Chris was the ringleader. He always had that wild spark in his eyes, the one that convinced you to go along even when you knew it was a bad idea. "There's an unlocked window in the basement," he whispered as we sat on his porch after dark. "We could get in, explore the place at night. Tell me that doesn't sound badass." Roland and Brandon, the other two idiots in our group, grinned like little kids. They were in without hesitation. I should have said no. Every instinct in my body told me not to. But I didn't want to be the coward. I wanted to belong. So I nodded. That's mistake number one. Around midnight, we met by the back of the school. The campus was empty. The parking lot bathed in dim orange light from the street lamps. The building loomed like a giant shadow, all the windows black except for the faint red glow of the exit signs inside. Chris led us to the basement entrance. It was one of those old storm cellar-style staircases, half hidden behind a rusted metal gate. He jumped it easily and we followed. The basement window was cracked open, just like he said, too narrow to crawl through without effort. We boosted each other up, squeezing through the frame one by one. Dust and cobwebs stuck to my hoodie as I dropped inside. The basement was darker than I expected. One weak bulb flickered at the far end, barely enough to outline the clutter. Broken chairs, old science equipment, boxes stacked to the ceiling. The air smelled damp, metallic like rust mixed with mildew. At first it was thrilling. We whispered and laughed, daring each other to open boxes, to walk down narrow halls filled with shadows. Roland found a busted clarinet and made awful noises with it until we shut him up. Then Chris said, "Let's go upstairs." That's when things changed. We crept up the basement stairs, pushing open the heavy door. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. The hallway stretched in both directions, completely black except for those glowing red exit signs. The silence was thick. No hum of lights, no distant cars, nothing. Just our sneakers squeaking on the tiles. "This is creepy as hell," Brandon whispered. "Exactly," Chris grinned. "That's the point." We wandered past classrooms, peering through little windows in the doors. Desks, chalkboards, bulletin boards frozen in time. My stomach tightened with every step. The school felt wrong, like it was watching us. At one point we passed the library. Chris pushed the door and it creaked open. The shelves loomed in the dark, row after row, like a forest of paper. Roland muttered, "Bet it's haunted." I laughed nervously. "Shut up," but then we heard something, a thud. From the back of the library, we all froze. "Probably just a book falling," Chris whispered, though his voice wasn't as steady as usual. We listened. Silence. Then, another thud. Louder. Chris, being Chris, decided to investigate. He motioned for us to follow. I wanted to refuse, but my feet moved anyway. We crept between the shelves, phones out for light. Shadows stretched across the floor, shifting with every step. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would echo. Then I saw it. A figure standing at the far end of the aisle. Tall. Still. Its head slowly tilted, just enough to catch the dim light. We all froze. My mouth went dry. "Who's there?" Chris called, voice cracking. The figure didn't move. Then, it ducked behind the shelf. That was all it took. We bolted, sprinting out of the library, not stopping until we were halfway down the hall. "What the hell was that?" Roland hissed. "Probably a janitor," Chris panted, though he didn't sound convinced. "Or someone messing with us." "Janitors don't stand in the dark like that," I snapped. My hands shook. We need to get out. But of course, Chris wasn't ready to leave. He dragged us toward the gym, said it would be fun to play basketball in the dark. My nerves were shot, but I followed, too scared to split from the group. The gym was massive, cavernous, our footsteps echoing off the walls. The basketballs were locked up, but Chris found one lying on the bleachers. He dribbled it, the sound booming unnaturally loud. That's when the lights flickered. Not all of them, just one, way up high, buzzing, sputtering. Enough to make the shadows dance. Then the ball stopped bouncing. Chris froze. It slipped, but the ball didn't roll naturally. It jerked as if nudged by something unseen. It rolled slowly across the court, then stopped dead in the center. We stared. Nobody moved. Then it came back. Not rolled. Bounced. Once, twice, slowly. But none of us touched it. That's when Roland screamed. We spun around. He was pointing at the bleachers. Someone was sitting there. At least it looked like someone. A shape darker than the dark around it. No details, no features, just an outline of a person sitting completely still. We didn't wait. We ran. We barreled through the halls, searching for the basement stairs. Every hallway looked the same. And in the panic, I couldn't tell if we were circling or going deeper in. My phone battery was dying. The light dimming. At one point, Brandon shouted that he saw the exit. We rushed after him, only to find a locked door. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Soft at first, then louder. Not playful laughter, cruel, echoing, almost broken. It came from behind us. I turned. Nothing. Just a long, empty hallway. But the laughter didn't stop. It grew, overlapping, like multiple voices laughing in unison. We sprinted, finally stumbling back into the basement. I don't know how we found it, but we didn't question it. We dove through the narrow window one by one, scraping our arms, desperate to get out. When I hit the cool night air, I didn't stop running until I was blocks away from campus. We never talked about it. Not really. The next day at school, we avoided each other's eyes, each pretending nothing happened. But I knew they felt it too. That wrongness. That thing watching us. But here's the part that never leaves me. When I got home that night, exhausted, I went straight to bed. Hours later, I woke up to a sound at my window. Tap, tap, tap. I thought it was a tree branch. But when I looked, my stomach dropped. Pressed against the glass were two pale hands, and behind them, a face. Not a stranger's face. Chris's face. Grinning. But I knew Chris was asleep at his house across town. I screamed, waking my parents, but by the time they came in, the window was empty. I never broke into the school again. But sometimes when I pass it at night, I see shapes in the windows. Watching. Waiting. And I wonder if whatever we disturbed that night followed us out. Because I still hear the laughter.